Hello, welcome to the Healthy for Men podcast series. Today we are talking all about confidence and how to improve your confidence and how to live a more fulfilling and comfortable life in the world around you. To talk about confidence today, we have communications expert Dominic Colenso. Dominic, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So we worked together recently on a piece all about public speaking, how to overcome your public speaking fears.
Yeah.
So to start off with, Dominic, can you tell us why you think, it might be an obvious question, but why you think confidence is so important?
You're going to face a lot of challenges in your life. To some extent, getting out of bed and walking out the front door can be one of those challenges. But the more confidence you have in every situation, the better results you're going to get. We spend so much time, don't we, with the voices in our heads, that inner dialogue constantly going on and, saying, should I, shouldn't I? Do they love me? Don't they love me? And the more that we can take control of that, I think the more opportunity we have to fulfill our goals, to fulfill our potential and really kind of take the next steps.
Absolutely, yeah. So, as you say, it kind of it's fuel for every aspect of our life, whatever it is. Whether it's it might not be anything to do with speaking to other people or communicate. It might just be to do with taking on a new fitness plan or nutrition plan, having that confidence in yourself. So, why do you think some men really struggle with confidence?
I think it probably comes down to bad experiences. If you've been told as a kid that you're not good at something or that you don't look a certain way, then those things tend to stay with us, and sometimes it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So one of the challenges is to be able to kind of break out of that. I remember at a very young age auditioning for the school play and being told by the headmaster, who I'll caveat that he became a family friend after this episode, but I remember I auditioned for the school play. It was Oliver, and I had to do a kind of singing audition, and at one point he just sort of stopped everything and he said, "No, stop, you sing like a drain pipe." and I remember being absolutely crushed. I mean, completely crushed. And I went home and I was a bit kind of quiet, and my mum kind of asked me what the matter was. And after about sort of, 3 or 4 minutes of probing, I finally said, well, Mr. Peters said I sang like a drain pipe. And she marched me into school the next day and marched me into his office and said, why did you say that? And he kind of apologised and said he was only joking and cast me in the play, and it kind of all got better. But I can imagine that absolutely. But if I hadn't have had that support in that situation, if I hadn't told someone about what was going on, then quite possibly I'd have never ended up doing what I did. Yeah, absolutely. So this leads on to talking about your history and your experiences. I suppose you must have experienced quite a few of those scenarios where your confidence is knocked. To get to a point where you are now, where you're you coach people for public speaking and coach people to essentially be more confident. So. What is your sort of story up until now? What's your background? So my background is actually in the world of acting. So, Martin Peters didn't affect me that much and I managed to overcome that. And I went to drama school in London, trained for 3 years, and then went out into that big bad world where you are getting, if you're having a good week, you're getting knocked back on a regular basis. In order to be in the game and auditioning, you have to start to deal with a certain amount of critical feedback, as it were. I had a fantastic career as an actor. My claim to fame is that I was Virgil Tracy in the Thunderbirds movie in 2004 with Sir Ben Kingsley and Bill Paxton. So I had my opportunity to fly around the world and sign the autographs and do the whole red carpet thing, which is a lot of fun.
What was that like?
I was 21 at the time, so you can imagine that was, the dream, essentially. I was a big Thunderbirds fan, so to be working on something that I'd grown up with, to be stepping into that role, to just sort of have the crazy experience of seeing your face on the side of a London bus and going to a movie premiere where it was you on the screen was, mind-blowing and a huge amount of fun. It was like a kid in a candy shop, really.
Was that good for your confidence?
Yes and no. It's interesting. That self-doubt, I don't think ever goes away. I've been very privileged to work with some fantastic actors in my career, and it's a continual process. It's easy from the outside to assume that because someone's at the top of their game, they've got everything together. The reality is often quite different. It's something that people are continually working on and fighting the inner voices, if you like.
So it would seem that some of the most confident people that we see on every day suffer from confidence issues.
Yeah, and I think there's an assumption that to be confident, you've got to be an extrovert, you kind of got to be out there and jazz hands and all of that sort of stuff, and that's not really the case, I don't think. You put me into a networking situation, drop me into a room full of people that I don't know, and I'm the guy in the corner on my phone, but I now have a toolkit which I can turn to, which allows me to, make the best of those sorts of situations.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm the same in that situation where there's network and you're almost, you have to perform this role and you have to think about, oh God, I've got to speak to this person, or what do I do? I just retreat back to that corner of the room, phone in hand. Yeah. No, I can't do
Pretend to send a text message.
Yeah, exactly. Or just text my mum and tell her I miss her because I'm too scared. So do you feel more comfortable then when you're public speaking, would you say?
I think, again, it's using a different skill set. So for me, confidence is not something that you have necessarily. It's almost something that you give. If you're focused on the task, if you're focused on your audience, if you're focused on your goal, then you get out of your own way. And I think quite a lot of the time those confidence issues just tend to be, us stopping ourselves from doing things rather than us allowing ourselves to take the next step. And it is always that. It's just one tiny step after another. As a young actor, while I was training at drama school, I used to go bright red whenever I had to go onto stage. I'd be sleepless nights the night before a performance and all of that sort of thing. And gradually, as I started to develop the skill set, I was able to get rid of some of that anxiety. But that still doesn't mean that I don't get butterflies in my stomach. Even coming and doing an interview like this, there's still a part of me that, will I say the right thing? Will I say something stupid? And actually, if I engage with you in this conversation, then I can let all of that stuff go.
Yeah. So that's it, isn't it? And I think a large part of your book, Impact, is discusses that of being in the moment and focusing on the sort of topic at hand rather than all the ways it could possibly go wrong. So how do you explain to our listeners how you could develop a technique of dealing with that fear?
Yeah, in the book I talk about kind of 6 ingredients, if you like, that create that impact. Intention, your objective. What do you want people to know? What do you want people to feel? What do you want people to do? Then the mindset piece, how do you take control of some of those voices? How do you identify the things that I would call your hot buttons, the things that other people do that trigger responses in you? We're quite cyclical as human beings, quite predictable in a sense. We assume ways of being that sometimes don't serve us in the best possible way. So, we allow the same thing to annoy us or, get us going or make us feel unconfident or nervous. And so if we can start to identify those ahead of the game, then you start to be able to put some strategies in place to stop that. The next ingredient for me would be presence. What do you do with your body? What do you do with your voice? The mind and the body are really linked. So often when I'm working with clients and I'm seeing people that are saying, I feel nervous or I'm lacking confidence in this scenario. If I were to take a photo of them in that situation, they don't need to say anything. They don't need to tell me they're not confident. Their body is saying it all. And if I were then to take a photo of them in a situation where they felt relaxed or excited, their body would be doing something completely different. It is normally that people are, making themselves smaller. They're holding tension. They're kind of getting tight and literally tying themselves up in knots when they don't have confidence. And when they're feeling confident, they start to expand. They start to take up space. They relax. They move. So once you know that and you understand those triggers for yourself, you can start to bring that to bear. You can start to notice in the moment, I'm about to embark on this new thing. What's going on for my body right now? Here I am. My shoulders are tight, my jaw's locked. What happens if I relax? What happens if I, have a bit of a stretch, take up a bit more space?
So that brings with it the confidence.
Starts to bring, what is actually going on in that moment is a shift in your hormone balance. So your testosterone, your confidence hormone, is going up as you make yourself bigger. Your cortisol level is going down. Your stress hormone is dissipating. And it's quite fascinating if you look at athletes who have been blind from birth. When they cross the finish line, they will naturally take up this kind of expansive sort of star pose, if you like. I know you can't see me right now, but my arms are outstretched, my chest is puffed up, and that's the natural thing that we do when we're winning. You'll see that with football teams. You'll see that with rock stars. We kind of go to the crowd and we say, kind of, look at me, and when you do that, when you take up that space, then that testosterone level naturally starts to rise. So to be honest, you can go and lock yourself in a toilet cubicle and do that before you have one of these challenging situations, and you get the benefit without anyone having to see you do it.
Have you found yourself doing that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. A free way to boost yourself and get yourself ready for those sorts of situations.
Totally. So do you ever do breathing exercises as well?
Yeah, a big part of the kind of mindset piece for me is being able to just quieten some of the noise, focus your thoughts. I don't know about you, but there are so many calls for my attention during a day. If I'm at the computer, then my phone will ding, or a notification will come up, or someone across the office will shout over, and it's so easy to kind of get lost in a loop and just have a lot of noise happening. So I do a lot of breath work with clients, very, very much linked to mindfulness, but actually for me, it has its roots in something called the Alexander technique and the kind of breath work that actors do in preparation for using their voice. And then that's quite an interesting combination, because the two things come hand in hand. So if you're breathing well, you're reducing that stress response, but also you're fueling your voice so you can make yourself heard. And I think it's quite interesting, quite often one of the symptoms of a lack of confidence is that, people make themselves a bit quieter and a little bit tentative maybe, and maybe the voice goes up a little bit and they're not quite so sure. Whereas if you're hearing something that's kind of more grounded, more rich, more supported, then other people are going to believe it more. Yeah.
So we were talking earlier a little bit about nature versus nurture. You get some people that just seem like they're super confident and they're born to just be themselves. Yeah. Do you think that it's more of a nurture thing or more of a nature thing?
I think there probably are some people that are just born with it, to be perfectly honest. I'm not one of them. And yet I hope that in the important scenarios, I come across as a relatively confident person. You know, I pride myself on my ability to face scrutiny, to take risks, to, you know, put myself in challenging situations. And that for me is learned behavior. That's a combination of some of the stuff that we've already been talking about, and a conscious choice to step outside of my comfort zone. I've always found throughout my life, throughout my career, you know, any challenge that I've been taking on, whether it's a fitness goal or a health goal, the moment that you kind of force yourself to jump out of the aeroplane, if you like, is the moment when the exciting things happen. And I've never done a skydive, but I imagine that moment when you're sort of sitting on the edge of the plane and the doors are open and it's kind of now or never, there must be a lot of stuff going through your head. To be like
public speaking,
but it is exactly. I think it's probably quite a good analogy. But the moment that you just take that deep breath and go for it, you know, exciting things tend to happen.
So, what is your number one advice for someone who is struggling to you know, fulfill their role in their job or whatever because they're being held back from?
I think it all starts with that intention piece. You've got to understand what you want. You've got to start to make some choices. I think some people struggle because they're fearful that if they make that commitment, then they can never change. You know, so like decision paralysis. I'm not going to do anything just in case it's the wrong decision. Whereas you can always course correct. And so being able to go, this is where I'd like to go, and I'm just going to take the first step and, you know, take it day by day. That's one of my kind of core principles, that every day I want to take a positive step forward, not a leap, just a step. If I've done one thing, if I've sent the email, if I've made the phone call, if I've introduced myself to someone, or, you know, done the piece of research, it doesn't have to be about other people. It can be for yourself. Making time. We're really, really time poor, I think, or are we? You know, have you checked your screen time on your phone, and how many minutes or hours have you spent on social media when you could have been doing something else? You could have, even if you just took 10 minutes of that time, and I know that's a real challenge sometimes, and I'll be really honest, I find myself going in and out of those loops, but it's something that I'm continually assessing and checking, and that's allowed me to make some, you know, significant steps forward in the direction that I want to go. You know, one of the things that my wife and I did last year was we decided to see if we could cut alcohol out for a year. Not because it was a, you know, big problem in our life or anything like that, but because we were just intrigued to know whether we could have that level of focus and what other stuff might happen because of it.
How did that go?
Well, I wrote a book. You know, and I say that quite flippantly, but I was able to take that time when normally maybe I was sitting in front of the TV with a glass of wine enjoying Netflix and go, okay, why don't I go out to the office and spend this half an hour working on a new chapter?
Create something,
absolutely.
Fantastic.
So, and again, that was one of those jumping out of the aeroplane moments. Like, how are other people going to react? How am I going to deal with some of these social situations where, you know, they're quite linked, not to getting, you know, completely annihilated, but just to having a celebratory glass of wine. Christmas, we hosted Christmas for 12 people, and what do? Wow. Well, you just have a nice glass of water, or you get an alcohol-free beer, or, you know, you can kind of problem solve those things quite quickly.
Was it fun? Did you have a good time?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. Highly recommend it. Really, just to just to see what happens to your sleep, what happens to the energy levels and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, we're now no longer teetotal, but we don't really drink. Right. You know, we really kind of cut back and enjoy, you know, having a glass of wine or something, a beer, if there's a reason behind it. But we're not just kind of reaching for the fridge on a Friday night.
So when you're writing your book, you know, disclaimer: Dominic's book Impact is fantastic, but did you ever think to yourself, "Oh, this isn't very good," or "Oh, you just ever lose the confidence in yourself in writing it"? And
I mean, it's like any moment that you put yourself out there, you open yourself up to scrutiny, not just from other people, but from yourself.
Right, yeah.
And it's really, really easy to start to look at what you've done and start to pull it apart. But there's something about the act of creation, the act of taking a positive step that needs to be celebrated, because actually you put yourself in the minority when you do that. You put your head above the parapet. When you make that commitment to yourself that you're going to do 3 gym sessions a week, or you're going to change your diet and, you know, cut out sugar or whatever it is, you stand out from the crowd. And that is very much like the act of public speaking or talking in a meeting. You separate yourself from the group, and that can be a lonely place. But also that's quite an empowering place, because that's where you step into a moment of leadership. And you know, the important thing for me in writing the book and maintaining my confidence to keep writing the book was surrounding myself with a really good support network. My wife suffered through the 12 months of me writing it, but I also had some great friends who were happy to read chapters. The editor and the team that I worked with at the publisher were fantastic. And you have to be open to feedback, and I think that regardless of what your goal is, whether it's to you know, lose 10 kilos or to become a best-selling author, you have to have people with you on that journey, and you have to be willing to take feedback and adapt your plan. And so that was actually a really exciting, quite empowering thing. But yes, there were massive moments of doubt. And the moment that you actually sign it off and say, yes, you can publish it, then you think, oh, what have I done? And then you get lovely feedback and people say, oh, that was really useful. And then you go, okay, because that's what it's about.
It's worth it. But you've got to take that risk initially, haven't you? And you have to have the confidence to take that risk. Do you think it's just a fear of judgment? Is that the main fear why people aren't as confident as they could be?
I think there are probably 2 things. There's the fear of rejection, of other people not liking you or being critical of you, and there's probably a fear of not fulfilling your potential. But interestingly, there's also the fear of what happens if I do fulfill my potential, you know. So some people are stopped by what might not happen, and some people are actually stopped by what could happen. What if there's a real risk here that, you know, if I'm good at this, it's going to change my life. You know? And so I think you have to kind of be comfortable with being uncomfortable in that situation. Are
you comfortable now more than you ever have been, would you say? Do you get more comfortable, or do you just get more confident in being able to do these things?
I think you get more it's like a muscle. I think it's something that you have to continue to build, actually continue to to flex. It's like it's like going to the gym and doing some strength conditioning, but also making sure you go and do a yoga session in the week. Otherwise, you become really tight. There's always kind of yin and yang, light and dark. You need both in order to be able to succeed.
Yeah. So, have you ever worked with anyone that you've thought maybe they're never going to get it? Maybe they're beyond help.
I think there's always the danger that people look at other people and judge themselves against other people. So, not everyone is going to be as funny as Michael McIntyre. Not everyone is going to be as charismatic as, I don't know, Brad Pitt. Yeah. But it's not about trying to be someone else. It's about trying to be the best version of you. So if you feel comfortable, if you feel confident, that's the win for me. Yeah. And I've worked with some people that maybe will never win awards for what they're doing, but they feel so much more empowered than they did before we started the process. And I genuinely believe that it's something that you continue to improve. So I try and never stop learning. I'm constantly trying to watch back the videos of what I'm doing, get feedback from audiences and build that performance, because otherwise you just get bored. And if you're bored, your audience is going to be bored as well.
So is it part of that then constantly giving yourself recognition for the things that you're good at and your own values? Yeah.
Quick wins are really important. I think we quite often fail to celebrate our success. I'm a big fan of journaling and making sure that you acknowledge your achievements, that you every week in our weekly team meeting we talk about what the wins have been in the last 5 days, just so that we can see that progress, because sometimes you get a little bit lost. You can't see the wood for the trees. If you're taking that one small step forward each day, each week, you get that cumulative effect. And I think maybe because of social media, because of how instant information is, it's easy to think that everyone's an overnight success, that people go from zero to hero, that they've got something different than you have. But what you tend not to see is the private failure, the days when it went absolutely awfully, or the days when that person that seems to be so confident and in control was, curled up on the sofa feeling absolutely rubbish and not wanting to leave the house. And I think what's encouraging in the climate at the moment is that we're having much more in-depth conversations about mental health and about well-being, and for men especially, kind of losing this idea of having to be kind of macho and have everything sorted, and actually become a little bit more vulnerable. One of my premises is that with vulnerability comes power. Like, if you can open yourself up to other people, if you can show who you are as a human being, then the level of respect you get in return actually increases, not diminishes. People want to see a human being. They don't want to see a robot. They don't want to see Superman. So if you can open yourself up, if you can talk about the challenges that you're facing, if you can allow people to peek behind the curtain a little bit, then you really start to make a connection. Yeah.
I mean, that's a really good point, because we're always comparing ourselves to people on Instagram or whatever it is, our Facebook feeds, who have this sort of perfect life, and that's all you see, and everything is completely set up for them, with our sort of multifaceted, complex and problematic life that we have. So it's always going to be unrealistic. So would you recommend, as a sort of little routine, journaling every day then?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me there are kind of three components to my routine. The first is some sort of journaling, some sort of gratitude. Just realizing that life's probably not as bad as you think it is. That there's something going on. The sun came up this morning. You're still here. There's hopefully food on your table. There are people around you that you can turn to that love you. So if you can just spend a couple of minutes in that space each day, then that already starts to have a positive impact on your well-being and your confidence. The next thing for me is a little bit of exercise, a little bit of movement. I tend to either run or do yoga. They're my kind of two things. I did a lot of work a couple of years ago with a strength and conditioning coach who was absolutely brilliant, and I loved it. But I found for me the kind of effort of having to go to the gym each day or a couple of times a week or whatever it was just too complex. And now I've created for myself a little regime that happens at home, which doesn't involve anyone else, and that kind of works for me. And then the third piece is a bit of meditation, which if you'd have spoken to me 5 years ago, I'd have been, what? But actually I love the Headspace app. I love just sort of taking 10-15 minutes each day to set my intentions, to quieten some of that noise, make sure that I turn up focused, and I really notice on the days that I don't. So, full disclosure, I'm in a good run at the moment, but it's certainly not 100%. And I've got a young family. Life does get in the way, and sometimes you can't do these things all the time. But I know that if I haven't done those things, then actually I'm more open to getting pulled off track. As much as I possibly can, that's the way I like to set myself
that's what
up.
works for you. So we talked a little bit about men, and men are less able to historically open up about their problems and talk about it. And I think they're more self-conscious about their vulnerability.
Yeah.
In your experience, would you say men or women suffer from more or less? Are men more confident than women generally, or less?
I would suggest and I've worked with several thousand people over the last 5 years. I would say that men pretend to be more confident than women. So even some of the most kind of macho performances that I've seen, you scratch beneath the surface, and it's not quite as solid as it might look.
I can imagine.
I think everyone struggles with that idea of vulnerability. We are fallible, we are human, we want to be liked, we want to be loved, and we don't want to let other people down. And I think sometimes when we step outside of our comfort zone, those things start to play on us quite hard. So the more tools you have in your toolkit, the more chance you've got of not being affected by that.
Right, yeah. So the more of a routine you have, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Preparation, practice, and as we've been saying, my specialism, if you like, is around communication and how we show up at work, and I'm drawing on that acting background. But as you mentioned right at the beginning of this, whether that is making a decision to start a new exercise regime, or whether it's about, getting out there socially and meeting new people outside of work, all of those things require us to have a process, if you like, which maybe sounds a little bit unromantic, but I think if you know the steps that you need to take, then it makes life a lot easier.
Absolutely. I think knowing that you have that process as well is a bit of a confidence boost.
Yeah, and knowing that often everyone else is in exactly the same boat. I mean, if you're giving a presentation at work, like if you think about any presentation that you've sat through, it's very, very unlikely that you were sitting in that meeting or in that conference thinking, I hope the next half an hour is a complete load of rubbish. Yeah. You're sitting there looking at that presenter saying, please be good. Mm-hmm. Please make the fact that I'm here and not at my desk doing my job worthwhile. Please give me a piece of information that I can take away from this. So your audience wants you to succeed.
Yeah, they're not your enemy.
They're not, and exactly the same in a networking situation, whether that's business networking or whether that's a social environment where loads of new people are coming together. I don't really know anyone that loves networking. I don't really know anyone that loves being in a room full of strangers. So most people in that room are thinking, I'd really hope that someone connects with me.
Even though most people's LinkedIn says they love networking more than anything.
But and that for me is where this idea of sharing your story, revealing a little bit about who you are, being a little bit vulnerable is really important. Yeah. We're very unlikely to remember someone because of their job title or the company that they work for. We're much more likely to remember them because they've told us something about themselves that connects with us. We're always looking for things that we have in common with other people. So if you're not revealing anything about yourself, if you're trying to play it straight and stay professional in inverted commas, you're very unlikely to find that hook for other people.
But I suppose so many people feel that little story that they have, or that little piece of them that they would share, is just not good enough, or it's not interesting, or it's going to offend someone, or
I think it's completely natural and normal to think that your life isn't very interesting. The reality is you're the only person that's ever lived that life. Mm-hmm. You've done things in a combination that no other human being has ever achieved and or will in the future. Whether that's just something weird, that you did at school when you were 16, or the choice of first job that you applied for. There are all sorts of things about us as individuals that are absolutely fascinating to other people that we completely take for granted. I'm always amazed, especially if we're doing workshops with organisations. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to get a group of leaders in a room for a couple of days, and I'll always do something around storytelling, and they'll start to speak to each other about the things that they've done. And these are people that sometimes have worked together for years, and they're going, oh my God, really? You did? Oh, that was amazing. And all of a sudden the level of connection and the depth of the bond between people just goes up massively. And they're things that people are scared to talk about for fear of appearing foolish, or for fear of feeling irrelevant. But actually, that's human experience. That's what's interesting.
Yeah. So how do you get over that that fear of being irrelevant? I suppose, like you mentioned in your book, it's largely about silencing those voices in your head that we have. Do you have a method for? Do you get those voices often?
Yeah, I think one of the key ways to do that is to give yourself a structure. So in the content section of the book, I talk a lot about having scaffolding, structures that allow you to go into a situation and kind of know the path that you're going to tread, so it's not completely unfamiliar. You can plug in new information into the formula, but you know that the formula is there and it works, and you can fall back on it. So, for example, in a networking context, I talk to people about using the idea of past, present, future. So, what did you used to do? What's something interesting about you? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Did you go to university? Did you once get into the Guinness Book of Records for tiddlywinks? I don't know, whatever it might be. Where are you now? What's present? What's happening? What are you enjoying about your job? Where are you living? What thing do you do on a Friday night? And then future. What's coming up? 2 weeks down the line, I'm off on holiday to Spain, or I'm running a marathon. I've signed myself up for a half marathon. I'm going to take up the recorder, I don't know, whatever it is. But what's interesting about that as a formula in terms of introduction, past, present, future, is that it gives your audience 3 different hooks. So rather than just saying, hey, I'm Dominic, I'm a communication skills expert, I'm a speaker, tumbleweed. If you're not interested, you're not interested. If I say, hey, I'm Dominic, used to be an actor, did some stuff on TV and film, I now spend most of my time speaking to audiences about communication. I've just written a book, and actually next week I'm off to Bulgaria to work with the leadership team out there on their storytelling.
That's how I should have introduced you.
There you go.
I'll edit that. It's fine.
But that allows the audience to choose which of those 3 things are interesting. So if you don't care about acting, then you're not going to have a conversation with me. But if you're interested in public speaking, or want to be a speaker, then we can have a conversation about that. If you went skiing last year to Bulgaria, then here we are having a conversation about that instead. So it just allows your audience to choose what topic they want to pick up on. It's not about boasting, it's about an act of generosity, an opportunity for the conversation to grow rather than just to get shut down. Yeah. So we live in quite a critical world, I think, especially with social media, where there's the most critical people, the loudest, so it makes it feel like we live in a very critical world, at least. But I think a lot of the fear, I mean, for me personally, a lot of the time that I get held back from entering a conversation or being more sociable is because I'm scared of being that person that talks about them, he just wouldn't shut up about himself, or and I have that voice in my head. That's the loudest part of it. I think it's probably the same for a lot of people. Yeah. Is that an epidemic, or is that just me? I'm kind of curious as to why that is such a big thing. Like, does it really matter who says that that's a problem? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Because if we put the responsibility for our actions out onto other people and their judgment and what they say, then we probably wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, we've got no hope.
We've got no hope. So I think it's important to know that you can only change your own behaviour. You can't change other people's behaviour. You can't make people like you. You can't make people be impressed by you. What's the saying? The hater's going to hate. But it's kind of true. Yeah. So what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And then are you taking steps towards that? And one of my teachers at drama school was absolutely kind of hot on have you played full out? She used to say, leave no stone unturned. That was her kind of catchphrase. And what she meant by that is, have you seized every opportunity? Have you thought through every possibility? And have you done everything that you've done to give the best performance that you can give. Because if you have, who cares what anyone else thinks?
Don't worry about it. You've done it great. You've succeeded.
You've succeeded. And it really, you know, it doesn't matter whether the critics loved it or you got the part. If you can walk out of that situation with your head held high and say, look, I bought my A game, then job done.
Yeah.
And for me, that was always, as an actor auditioning, that was always the big thing. And there were days when I didn't, and there were days where I walk out and I go, you know what, I shouldn't have stayed up and watched that film on Channel 4 or whatever it was. I should have sat up with the script and done the extra work and really kind of nailed those lines. And then there were days where I'd walk in and I go, you know what, I nailed that. And I didn't get the job, but I nailed it. I did the best I could do. And inevitably what would happen is that actually some other door would open. That director or casting director would see that, okay, you weren't right for this, but you were probably right for that, or there was another opportunity down the line. So playful out, leave no stone unturned.
Leave no stone unturned. Go out and kill it.
Yeah.
Well, Dominic, thank you so much for coming in and giving us more confidence. It's been great speaking to you. Would you like to just talk a little bit about your book, maybe explain what people can expect from Impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Impact is a guide to being more confident, increasing your influence and knowing what to say under pressure. That's the kind of tagline for the book, and hopefully it does what it says on the tin. So the 6-step methodology, your intention, your mindset, your presence, understanding your audience, nailing your content, and really developing your technique, broken down into hopefully nice bite-sized chunks, lots of exercises for you to go away and think about. There's some video resources on there as well, and downloadable worksheets. It's also going to be available on Audible, so if you're not keen on reading it but want to listen to it, you can jump in that way too.
Fantastic. Also check out Healthy for Men, where we interview Dominic about public speaking and how to get over your fear of glossophobia.
Indeed.
Out now in any Holland & Barrett store across the UK. Thank you ever so much for listening. Thank you, Dominic, for coming in and speaking to us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.